Before we get into the video today, I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Gnostic TV. Gnostic TV is ancient wisdom reimagined. This is a Netflix for those who are spiritually curious and want a place to go where there is no censorship. I personally am doing a whole series on Gnostic TV called the Esoteric Explorer, where I am providing exclusive content to Gnostic. Gnostic TV is a host to all sorts of different content creators, many of whom are your old favorites. If you would like to check out Gnostic TV, there is a link down in the description box below. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. And again, I've got another Australian friend. So Esoteric Australia, I was telling our friend Tamara that I must have some deep karma with Australia, because I must have lived there in a past life, because I've ended up becoming such good friends with and I have so many Australians that watch this channel. It's wild.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
But we were just chatting before we started filming. Americans and Australians, we're kind of ruffians. We have a lot in common.
Yeah, we're like sisters from another mother.
And it is early in the morning for me. It's late in the evening for you, Paula, down in Perth. I'm obviously in Atlanta, Georgia. First of all, how was your Christmas, Paula? I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas. How did it go for you guys?
Yeah, I had a lovely day, thank you. I just hung out with my younger sister and my dad, and I had my big girls with me, and my little Scarlett was with her dad. So it was a bit more quiet than usual with that little Scarlett running around, but no, it was beautiful, thank you. And how was your Christmas?
It was good. I was laughing. I was telling my boyfriend, because I've spent a Christmas in Australia before, and I was telling him, I was like, it's kind of like our 4th of July, the way that they celebrate in Australia, because it's so hot,
Got the fan on, got the aircon on.
Yeah, and I'm just like, and he's like, oh, that's a kind of fun. And I was like, wait a minute. I kind of started thinking about it. I was telling you, I was like, we pretend it's cold in the South, but it's actually not. Like, we pretend. Up north they got the snow. Down here we're in shorts, but we pretend that it's actually a white Christmas. So
you're just sweating in your scarf and your baby.
We're kind of fun. But we like to pretend in Georgia that we're having a white Christmas and that it's cold outside, when it's actually more probably like what they're doing in Australia. Yeah, it's right after. I hope you guys had a wonderful holiday season. I know we're kind of in that weird week between Christmas and New Year where nobody knows what day it is. Nobody knows. Meals are weird, and we're eating. Everybody's like a little hungover mostly from food, because we're eating foods and we're eating leftovers of foods that we don't normally eat. I'm sure people are, especially with kids, having to clean up and pull the tree down and get all the decorations put away. And so hopefully you guys are enjoying the chaos of it all before we enter into the new year. But we were actually this morning, Paula, we were just going to have a meeting about the website or our new platform. But we started having a conversation last night. You were asking me some questions, and I was like, why don't we just do a video over this? Because I think for me, Paula, and I know I've said this before, is I've been in this world for 19 years. There's a lot that happens in 19 years, and a lot of mistakes that I've made, a lot of things that I've had to learn. But what also starts to happen is that I forget, especially since in my job outside of YouTube, I'm working constantly with people and that I forget people who've never even ventured into spirituality. There are some things that they might not be aware of that I am aware of. And I just don't think to say anything. But we were talking about fasting. You were texting me about fasting, and I'm going to let you kick it off from there, Paula, so we can kind of address this with our audience members, students, if you want to join us. But
yeah, welcome to be a student. Well, I was just messaging you about fasting, because as I know already that you are a Vata dosha, and I'm also dominant in Vata. And I do vaguely remember, because I've been listening to you for quite a few years, and I do vaguely remember you talking about fasting, and I just had a feeling it wasn't so good, because every time I've tried to do a fasting or a bit of like detoxing, like kind of just doing like juices or fruits and salads and stuff like that, it really knocks me out. Like I get so drained. I have barely enough. I can't do any exercise because I just feel very, very frail, especially in my upper body. I mean, I probably need to do a bit more core work as well. But yeah, it's just very, I just feel like I don't have the strength to do anything. And so that's why I was messaging you, and I was just like, as a Vata dosha, should we actually be fasting? And then the conversation just grew from there, kind of going into, you know, I feel like the kind of the darker side of fasting, because like I was saying to you, there are whole platforms out there on YouTube. There are podcasts about it. There are so many books. I mean, I've read a couple of books about fasting, and you're learning about it and thinking, wow, this is amazing. It's cleaning out your body, and you know, you get into the autophagy phase. I probably pronounced that wrong, but you know, where your body's just getting completely cleaned out. And I've always just thought, yeah, fasting was a very important thing to do for your health. And then I was chatting to you, and I'm like, oh wow, maybe not. So yeah, so yeah, I'll let
Well,
you.
there's so many, and I want to, before we get, this is very nuanced, so it's always going to depend on the person as well, you know. And so, and as we know, that's what I love about the dosha stuff, system, is that it basically is telling you, even though we all have the same template of a body, we got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 kidneys, a colon, you know, heart, 2 lungs, we're very different because of our disposition. And your disposition is based off of your karma. Now, again, karma is, I think in the Western world, we're afraid of that word a lot. You know, so we're going to get your karma. Well, yeah, but karma is cause and effect. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just your work. That's all it is. And so your soul, in its infinite wisdom, designed your life that you're experiencing now down to every minute detail of your physical body in order for you to soak up the most lessons to refine your soul. So for me and for you, that meant we have dominant Vata bodies. Now, in past lives, we could have been dominant Kapha or Pitta, you know, but in this existence, you and I are both Vata. Now, Vatas do not need to be fasting at all. Like, that is not okay for Vatas. And the reason why,
just blew my mind.
it's just not okay for Vatas. The people who fast the best are Kappas. Now, Vatas, this is where it gets interesting, because Vatas actually have the easier time fasting, because Vatas are not really foodies.
Yeah.
But Kappas are, right? Kappas love to eat. They love their food, right? They're very grounded, very, you know, heavier people. But Vatas, on the most part, have to eat more than Kappas. We are supposed to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Where Kappas can go a longer period of time. Why is that? Well, Vata is the air dosha. So we have a harder time as Vatas, like, being in our bodies. We're very wafy people. Like, we're very we're very bony.
Yeah, I've got very
bony people. Got tight, you know, I've got knobby knees, my hips, you know, very bony people. We don't hold weight well. When Vatas do gain a few pounds, it's way more uncomfortable and noticeable than like a Kapha. Kappas are heavier boned people. And so Vatas, because their element is air, they're usually overthinkers. They usually struggle with anxiety. And if you guys know from the shadow work challenges that I've done in the past, I have you write down, because I'm not a fan of like diets. I want to heal your relationship with food. And a lot of that comes by understanding food is energy, and that but energy is going to be used for different things, right? And so I have people write down what they eat, and then 30 minutes later, write down how they're feeling for the most part. Like, how is it affecting not just your physical, but how is your mood? And I don't think most people realize that food does affect. Food can give you anxiety. Yeah. And that's another way your body's telling you this is not working. So with Vatas, when we think about getting hungry, most people think about your stomach growling. For Vatas, though, the first sign of hunger for a Vata is they're going to come spacey. They're going to be space cadets. That's their first sign of hunger. By the time a Vata's stomach is growling, they're in the danger zone.
Yeah, I was going to say it's too late.
Too late. And they will run the risk of passing out because they are wafy. And now, again, the funny thing is Vatas are not really the people that want to be eating 2 to 3 times a day, but they need to be. So that's interesting karma, right? Whereas Kappas, which is the polar opposite, they love to eat, but they're the ones that can go longer periods of time because of the disposition of their energy. So I was telling you, Paula, that for me, like even as a teacher, I constantly have learned to carry nuts or a banana in my bag. Because I know if I'm teaching, if I start to get like, especially in a Mysore setting where I'm not leading, it's just if I start to get a little spacey, I'll excuse myself and go eat some nuts or a banana, just because it's not just my safety at that point, it's the student safety as well, right? That I'm stay grounded. And as a Vata, I've learned that. Yeah, that's something that's just second nature to me. So when we talk about fasting with Vatas, we're going into an area that's actually breaking the laws of ahimsa, and ahimsa is nonviolence. That's the first rule of yoga. And so yoga, we talked about this before, the definition of, most people think of yoga is just poses. That's just the exercise. Yoga is basically, any spirituality is a form of yoga because it's a one-pointed focus, it's meditation, right? So anytime I say yoga, I'm referring to the big scheme of yoga, of spirituality as a whole, as an umbrella term versus the exercise. So when we look at the rules of yoga or spirituality, ahimsa is the first rule. And again, that's nonviolence. And that's easy for us to think about that with other people, but the most important person we're not violent with is ourselves. And so if you are a Vata dosha, and we were talking about the game, like the rules of the game. So basically what spirituality is telling you with Prakriti and Purusha, with the nature and the soul, is that your soul is playing a game with itself right now. This whole matrix that we're in, this illusionary matrix, this is a game. It's a game. Your soul is playing a game with itself. Now, there are rules to the game. Like, right? So I use the example, say you're sitting around with your friends and you're playing Monopoly. I can't stand Monopoly, by the way. The only board game I like is Clue. I think you guys call it Cluedo. I love Clue, but let's use Monopoly as an example. And let's say that you're playing the Monopoly game. You have these rules. You're playing a game with your family. You're trying to get to the end of the game because that's what our soul is trying to end the game. But we can't end the game by just throwing a temper tantrum and throwing the board off of the table and running away. That's not ending the game. Because that's actually creating more karma. Because now we got to clean the game up. We got to clean the pieces up. We got to put the game back and we got to start again. So this is what my teacher, David Grieg, would always call, spirituality being the unsolvable riddle. Because to play the game with our soul, we have to follow the rules of the game. So we have to be invested in the nature of ourselves, but not attaching to it. So we have to be able to understand the emotions, feel the emotions, live in the emotions, stand up for what's right, fight for ourselves, be totally invested in this experience of Bryce or of Paula, but also knowing while we're doing that this is all just a game. But to end the game, we got to play the rules.
Yeah.
And in order to not come back with more karma, to release our karma, we have to experience all this with having equanimity to the way the emotions play out. While also experiencing the emotions. Because that when we have the equanimity, like if we're heartbroken and we're crying, but we also know when we have that equanimity that it's going to work out and that this is just an experience, then we release karma. And I know that might be trippy for some people to hear this. If this doesn't make sense for you right now, that's okay. Just give it time. Like, this is wild stuff, right? Because we're so attached to we think that these lives are real. We think that we're real and that this is who I am.
And this is everything. Yeah.
It is and it isn't. It is for the game.
Yeah. But
it's not.
I guess I love just thinking of playing a video game, and you kind of getting in and you choose your character. Like, it makes me think of Jumanji quite a lot with the modern Jumanji, and they're jumping into that video game and they have to play the rules of the game. I feel like that movie is such a perfect analogy for what we're doing right now, because they choose their avatar. They come into the game, they physically, and they have certain rules they have to follow. And they can't die more than 3 times because that could be really bad. So I feel like it's so interesting. But then, so they have to follow the rules. They have to find all the clues and get as far as they can to get the jewel and whatever it is to free them from Jumanji. But at the same time, they know that that's not really them.
It's a game. Yeah. It's wild. And this is your soul playing a game with itself, you know?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about the rules of the game, you know, we can get into the matrix and all that kind of stuff, but your basic rules are your nature.
Mhm.
Your body needs to eat, your body
Yeah.
needs to breathe, your body needs water, and your body needs to sleep
Mhm. And to move.
and to move. So when we talk about things like fasting, we're going into kind of dangerous territory because we're kind of, you know, you can only go so long without food anyway, right? And so, and this kind of gets into a more complicated conversation about fasting. Well, we talk about fasting in general. So you have your dosha, and if you are a vata dosha, that's the rules of the game you're playing. So you might not
Like that's
be,
the avatar we chose to be.
yeah,
We've
and
got
you're
to
not
follow
going to
the
be able to
rules of that
handle it.
avatar.
Like, now again, if you have to have a medical procedure, like let's say you definitely there's some medical and you need to like clean your colon out or something. I know for like colonoscopies, like, and you know, there's different opinions on that. But you know, if you need to like not eat because you need to like cleanse an organ for, then that's a totally different thing, right? That's a
Yeah.
different. We're talking about fasting for spiritual reasons.
Yeah.
So when, you know, and if you guys on our course, we have a whole playlist on the Bhagavad Gita, and I used my notes on the Bhagavad Gita and also went through some of Ram Dass's course notes, and this actually came up, the fasting thing came up. And so it's interesting you brought it up because I just recorded this. It's like the universe wanted us to talk about this. And Ram Dass,
Yeah.
it was a class over renunciation, because what is renunciation? A lot of the yoga practice is a practice of renunciation. A lot of the spiritual practice is a practice of renunciation. Well, what does that actually mean though? It doesn't mean that you're going to go live in a cave by yourself, right? That's actually not, you know, think about monks and going, like ashrams are great for a small period of time. But if you're leaving the matrix behind to go live in a cave, are you really working through your karma or are you disassociating from it?
Mhm.
If it's your dharma to be a monk, then that's a totally different thing.
Okay.
But if you're running and taking yourself out of society and you're trying to convince yourself it's for spiritual purposes, I would beg you to reconsider.
Wow. And how do you think you would know the difference?
By the
Like if
life
you
you were born into.
okay.
So your soul, if you were, you know, and Ram Dass also talks about this too. You know, he was born Richard Alpert, a Jewish boy from New York. He picked up the name Ram Dass from his Neem Karoli Baba, his teacher in India, but he was very clear that even though he adopted a lot of Hindu practices, that he's a Jewish boy from New York. He can't ignore that. He has to also be that too. So I'm a white girl from Georgia. I have very much adapted a lot of Hindu practices. I love the Hindu faith. I find their stories to be beautiful. They really have impacted me, but I'm also a white girl in Georgia. I'm not Indian. I'm a Westerner.
So you've got to kind of balance the two.
Yeah. So I need to honor being a Westerner. I need to honor the fact that I am a white girl and I am Southern and this is my heritage.
So if you were to just run away to India and just become, well, are there female monks?
Not really, not maybe at one point. It's kind of, no. If I were
Yeah.
let's just to say I
But
would,
if you wanted to become a nun, for example, then that would be you escaping your karma of being a white girl in Georgia.
yeah. Now, if I was born into a Catholic family and nunnery was something that was kind of on the table anyway, because of culture, that might not be so. That might be part of my karma. That makes sense?
Okay.
So
Yes.
we can't disavow. So like for like Indians that, you know, are Americans that, you know, I had a student once who was born in America. He was a teenager and his parents were Indian from India who had immigrated here. He was born here. He was very American. And I see this a lot of times with, you know, first generation Americans, and his parents forced him to come to Mysore with me in the morning. This poor 16-year-old kid, you know, he just wanted to be a teenager in America because they wanted him to experience his heritage. And I would say that to him. I was like, you know, I almost said his name. I'm not going to say his name because he's young, but I would say, you know, I spent a lot of money going to India to learn this, and this is part of your heritage. Even though you are also an American because you were born here, so that's also part of your karma now. What your parents are doing are showing you a part of what your soul picked. If your soul did not want to have this heritage at all, it would have been born into a different body, in a different family.
Wow.
So we have to acknowledge, because that's the rules of the game for you. All of our rules are, we all have the same rules. We got to eat, we got to sleep, we got to do all that kind of stuff. But we
Yeah.
have different alternating rules depending on
Where we've chosen to be born, what kind of a life, like kind of parents we've had, what kind of culture we've been chosen to born into.
yeah.
Wow, how fascinating.
Yeah. So it's now, let's say you're a white person from America and you marry an Indian and y'all decide to move to India. That's definitely obviously part of your life plan. Now, does that mean when you move to India, you totally just renounce all your Western American habits and cultures? No. You hold on to some of those because that's really who you are, independent of your spouse. Yeah. And so everybody's is going to be different. It's going to be a little bit more nuanced. I was born in a city. I was born to professional families. I was born. So for me to just run off to the mountains and hide, that's not the trajectory of where my soul set me up to play this game out.
Mhm.
If my soul wanted a life where it lived in a mountain and didn't speak to anybody, I would have been born into a family where being a monk, a Tibetan monk or something, would have been an option.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. So when we're looking at the rules of the game, we have to really look at we are in this moment, but also knowing this is just a moment. This is just an experience for now, next life different. So what is it? And I've said this before, there's a lot about the Western world that drives me crazy. There's a lot about the Eastern world I love, but there's also a lot about India that drives me crazy. And there's a lot about America that I love. And so I'm proud to be a Westerner. I'm proud of my Western heritage. I'm proud of my ancestors. Everyone should be proud of their ancestors. And what can we learn? There's a saying, if you don't honor your ancestors, you'll carry them on your back, because that's inherited karma. That's inherited work that you picked. Right? So when we look at all these different techniques of spirituality, we have to look at the game and our place in the game. And one of the most complicated things with the ego is when we get into spiritual ego. So the ego is clever. It's super clever. Sometimes it will use spiritual tactics to trick you into feeding the ego.
Mhm.
So let's go back to the whole fasting thing. So Ram Dass talks about this with the renunciation, like to renounce food. To properly fast in the spiritual form and its spiritual integrity means that you don't eat for 3 days and not once do you think about food.
Wow.
Can you do that? I can't do that.
No, I don't
And if
think I
you
could
feel
do.
those hunger pains come up and that insatiable need to eat, and you deny your body that, you've now ventured into starvation, which is breaking the rule of the game, than actual fasting.
Mhm.
Because everything, so we look back at the definition of yoga being a one-pointed focus. Well, what's that one-pointed focus really? God. We bring the mind to the now, be here now. God lives in the now. Course in Miracles talks about this, right? So we're in that now. When you are super hungry, are you thinking about God? Your one-pointed focus is now on food,
Mhm.
right?
And that's not very spiritual. Thinking about all the yummy stuff that you could be eating right now.
A lot of times your behavior changes. You get hangry.
Yeah.
You're now emitting a more, so if somebody wants to fast for spiritual purposes, they're going to have to build up to it. So what do I mean by this? They're going to have to take a while to analyze their relationship with food and start to work on being able to eat a meal and enjoy the meal without attaching to the meal. So biting into that, I don't know, that grilled cheese sandwich and feeling every sensation of that melty cheese and butter and bread and how it feels when you eat it, and being fully present with that, but not attached to it.
Wow,
It's the same
that's
thing with renouncing like wealth. A lot of people think you have to, and I'm a minimalist, but a lot of times people think you have to be super poor to be spiritual. Well, no, There are a lot of super spiritual people who eat off of, as he says, gold plates, and they don't give a shit about the gold plates. It could be a paper plate for all they care. So even though they have the wealth and they enjoy it, they're not attached to it.
They're not attached to it, yeah.
That's the renunciation we're looking for. So if you're fasting for spiritual purposes, you need to be looking at your relationship with food. That's what it comes down to. What's your relationship with food? Now, here's the thing, too. That's another concern for me. Your body, because of the rules of the game, because we're all mortal beings, right? Your body can only take so much detox at one time. So if you're already exercising every day, eating healthy, doing all these things, journaling, facing your shadow work, living in your anger, journaling about it, looking at it, and then you add fasting on top of that, you're going to go into derangement. And that's the fine line. And that's why teachers like in traditional yoga have to spend like 10 years at least as a student before they actually start assisting a teacher. Because this is the fine line that takes a long time for someone to recognize, to be able then to help somebody else, to see where we're actually crossing the line into derangement. And when we get to that point, we talk a lot about, with the relationship of food comes obviously disordered eating. I'm going to be honest with you. I think most people have a very disordered relationship with food.
Yeah.
Even if they don't think they do. And this is where it's wild, because we think about when we're babies, we're just talking about that the first form of nutrients that we receive outside of the womb for most of us is from our mother's bodies. We cry because we're hungry, and then our mother pops us on and nurses us from her actual body. And so from that moment on, whether we're aware of it or not, we start to see food as a service of love, of connection. So we oftentimes, we just had a holiday. We often associate certain foods with Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year, and we have our family around and we're eating these foods and we're in this community. And a lot of people say, well, that's the bad thing, right? You need to just appreciate the community. No. That's not the rule of the game. Can you enjoy the food in that moment? Enjoy the casseroles you don't get any other time of year. Enjoy having the eggnog and a couple of drinks and being in communion with your family, but not attached to it. Be have equanimity towards it. There's the word. And that's difficult. That's very, very, very difficult. Food is also grounding as well. It's a tool to ground people. So sometimes when people overeat, or sometimes that they're missing, some people, oh, it's my relation, my mom or my dad. Actually, let's go deeper than that. It's because you're trying to feel grounded. You're trying to find groundedness, and food does offer that, I'll bet temporarily.
Yeah. So
can we find your groundedness while you eat when you need to, without relying on that substance to give you that all the time? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's
fascinating.
That's why I'm not a fan of fasting at all.
And so what about with intermittent fasting? Do you feel like that's any different, or is that pretty much the same thing?
I can get behind intermittent fasting, but it's going to depend on, because there are certain times where you do need your organs to rest, your digestive system to rest. So with intermittent fasting, like for a Vata, like my mother does a lot of intermittent fasting, but she's Kapha based, so she does it differently than me. So she might wait till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon to eat. Right? Her eating might be from like 2 to 7, but she's Kapha based. So she can go a longer period without becoming like a space cadet, I mean, for Vatas, if you get to that point where it's dangerous for a Vata to drive a car at that point, because they're so out of their body, right? Because what food is grounding. So for me, because I kind of do this for myself. So I stop eating and you have to be flexible with this too. Like, we just had a holiday. There has to be, so don't be so dogmatic that it loses the point. So on a normal day where there's no holiday, I will stop eating around 5 o'clock in the afternoon for me. Now, with that being said, I'm in bed by 7. So we usually don't go to sleep till like 8 or 9, but we'll like have our phones turned off and be watching a TV show. Yeah. So I can allow myself that time to not be so hyper focused on the world around me, because I'm coming in for the night. And then I sleep through most of that. Then I wake up in the morning, I do my practice. Your liver does excrete a chemical early in the morning that gives you a burst of energy. And then after I do my practice, that's when I'll eat my first meal. So I'll go like 13 hours without eating between, but I'm doing it at a particular time that works with a Vata.
Yeah. So I like to do a similar thing. I like to have dinner quite early as well. I probably finish eating around maybe 6 or 7. And then go to bed. I go to bed pretty early too, usually like 8 or 9 o'clock. But I love my sleep.
Yeah.
But then I'm up pretty early, and then I like to do my yoga. I don't do Ashtanga yoga, but maybe one day you can teach me how to do it. And then I like to have salt water as like my first thing that I have. I mean, that's quite new. I've only been doing that for a little while. Probably about a couple of months now, but I feel like that's been really good for me because it just kind of cleans me out. And I also like to have after that I've been doing this for about probably 3 or 4 years now, where I have a glass of coconut water with a teaspoon of bentonite clay and diatomaceous earth. And I love having that every day because that just kind of cleans me out. It's really good for your skin, for your hair, and gets rid of parasites and all of that kind of thing. So, and it also puts a lot of minerals back into your body, which is really good as well. And then I'll tend to have breakfast after that.
And that too with like exercise, if we just look at the science of exercise, and we take spirituality out of it in general, whenever you get into exercise and you're sweating, all of your blood is moving to your organs. So, I mean, to your muscles.
Yeah.
So it's leaving. So that's why you don't eat before you exercise, because you're going to get a cramp. So the good thing about when you don't eat snack at night and you get up and you get your liver secreting and you do your yoga or whatever you're doing, is you're actually putting your body in the best place to detox during that exercise, because there's nothing in your stomach. So the blood can't really go into and really dump out the organs. And they do say there is a theory, and I've never really totally looked into this, but it does make sense to me that I know a lot of personal trainers say this, that after you work out, you need to wait like 30 minutes before you eat, just to give your body, the blood, the chance to really get back into your organs, for repairing your muscles. So, I haven't done any research into that, but I know a lot of personal trainers recommend that. So that sounds pretty common sense to me. But yeah, but that's, and again, I'm going to reiterate. So if you're someone that's exercising every single day, you're drinking a ton of water, you're meditating, you're already in a place of renouncing. You're already doing work, and you're already putting your body in a shock state where you're detoxing stuff. Every time you exercise, that's a detox. Your skin is one of your organs that detoxes. So what do? You sweat. That's detoxing. You're already doing it. And it's so funny. My boyfriend tells a story because back when he first started, he would do cleanse after cleanse after cleanse. He was constantly he was a raw vegan, just got so obsessed with, he never felt like he was getting everything out. And finally, one of his doctors said to him, he was like a holistic doctor. He was like, you got nothing left to cleanse. You're clean. Stop. You're going to hurt yourself. So, that's another thing too. Like we know with disordered eating that this comes from, karma, like something that you need to work on. So if you're obsessed with cleansing, if you're obsessed with this kind of stuff, like my boyfriend was, I would say that this is a karma you need to look at, because it's not about the cleansing. There's something else you're trying to control.
Something else. Yeah. Something else going on. And
you can't, and that gets us back to this idea of being in balance. So what is balance? Well, balance is not ever steady. We're never, that's the thing. We're never done. You're done when you die. That's when you exit the game. That's when you're done. Right? There's never going to come a point on this earth where you're done learning, where you've gone through all your karma. When you die, you still haven't completed all your karma. That's why you got to come back or go to a different, that's why you have to play another game. Right?
And that's so difficult for perfectionists.
That is not the karma. That's probably part of the game for you in this life, is to realize you're never going to be. So people, we look at balance, like think about somebody on like a balance beam. Even though they're balancing, their body's still shifting back and forth to catch the balance, right? So
Yeah.
you're always in this fluctuating state, this ebb and flow. So even like 19 years later, I'm still ebbing and flowing, ebbing and flowing, ebbing and flowing, just constantly trying. And sometimes you fall too far this way and you got to pull yourself back. And sometimes you're going and you got to pull yourself back. So you're constantly like in this state of ebb and flow, ebb and flow, ebb and flow, ebb and flow. Right. And that's why, I see a lot of times people when they first start these practices, they become so dogmatic. The
Yeah.
pendulum swings. And I always laugh. I'm like, no offense, the Charlie Freak. Everybody used to watch Charlie Freak, and he seems like a great. I've done one show. He seems like a good guy. But my boyfriend and I would laugh because you could tell that he was a beginner with this stuff because he was so dogmatic with stuff. We would giggle because they're like, "Oh, he's just discovered this," because he's in that phase where it has to be this
Gotta
way,
be
no
perfect.
way. Where the more you do this, the more you
Kind of
realize
relaxed into it.
you relax a lot, right? Like it's like the first time people start doing yoga, they might like I have a real problem when people get on and say, well, alcohol is called spirits because they're spirits. For some people, yes,
Mhm.
but not for everybody.
Actually, yeah, that's something I've been wanting to ask you about. What are your thoughts on drinking alcohol?
If you have a problem with alcohol, then you need to address that problem with alcohol. But that is not
Mhm.
everybody else's problem. That's your karma.
Mhm.
It's your karma, boo. That's not your friend's
Mhm.
karma. I don't have a problem with alcohol.
Mhm.
I can be at a bar and not get a drink. I am very, like I don't drink at all really, except for like the holiday. Like actually, I didn't even drink this Christmas. Usually, I have a drink on Christmas. I'll probably the next time I have a drink will probably be on my birthday,
Yeah, right.
and I can have a couple of drinks. And honestly, because I don't drink that much, a couple of drinks is all it takes for me to get giggly, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's it. And I can enjoy that in that moment, and then wake up the next day, you'll be a little hungover, but be fine and can carry on and not
Yeah.
think about it, right? So for me, alcohol is not a problem for me. It's not
Mhm.
part of my karma. So I can use it to enjoy my social experience of my birthday or holiday or whatever with my friends and
Occasion. Yeah.
family,
Mhm.
and use it for the purpose of I'm never going to be somebody that drinks by myself. Like that's not, I know that's not, and to me, I kind of think that may be a sign of if people just kind of drink. And especially in the South, I will say alcohol is a huge, like in most cultures, alcohol is a huge part of Southern culture. Everybody's got a bar in their house. Everybody has, a drink at night. Like it's very huge part of Southern culture.
Mhm.
But in saying that, you can definitely tell people that have a problem and people who
Yeah.
don't.
Right.
It,
I
it
feel
would be,
like it very easily becomes a habit.
yeah,
And it becomes something that you kind of look forward to.
right.
So for me, last year was a bit of a challenging year for me on a personal level. And I did get to the point where I was pretty much having a glass of wine pretty much every day. And then I realized I'm like, yeah, that's a problem
So you
because I
picked
should
up
have
on it.
done.
And
Yeah.
you didn't force your family to like renounce alcohol with you. You didn't
No.
force, like there's not, and we all do that. Like people do that with food.
Mhm.
Like they want comfort, so they look for something. It's a natural human response. So no one should be
Mhm.
ashamed of that. Like the fact that you've noticed it is like the really kind of the only step you take in actually understanding what's going on. And it's like, let's say you're a food addict and
Mhm.
you love French fries and that's like your vice. Would you then expect everybody in the world to give up French fries because you struggle? I find people who believe that alcohol should be just outlawed and no, I find that to be very narcissistic and very
Interesting.
entitled because it's projecting your issues onto the world.
Yeah. And just because you've got that particular issue doesn't mean that that's everybody else's problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that being said, with balance too, like, obviously we have a bunch of junk food in this world. We know that. And I
Mhm.
try to eat pretty cleanly most of the time. But when we go on road trips, you bet your bottom dollar I'm buying a big bag of Doritos from the gas station. It's a
Yep.
road trip. And yeah, my stomach will probably hurt afterwards, but that's kind of having that balance. And we have to also remember one of the laws of Ayurveda, and that is that as above, so below. Like, so your internal system cannot be purer than your external world.
Mhm.
So Paul lives in a city. I live in a city. By nature, because our karma is in these cities right now, for our health and to be balanced in the city, we're going to have some toxins in our system
Mhm.
because the world
Otherwise, the body
around us.
just doesn't cope.
Yeah. And then what happens if your body doesn't cope, your mind doesn't cope. So if you live in a city, you have way more toxic fuel that you're breathing in.
Mhm.
right? There's way more chi, vata. Cities are very vata, and there's a lot of lights and light pollution.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of that. That if you so I always laugh with my students. I'm here in Atlanta. I'm like, guess what? Because you live in a city, you get to have a beer every once in a while. You get to eat some greasy French fries because you need to be in alignment and make sure you're not pure. Now, if you lived up in the North Georgia mountains, you could be a little bit more.
Different.
It'll be different because your outside is pure. There's hardly any internet there. It's fresh running water. So you have to recognize, and that again comes back to the rules of the game. Are you playing the rules of the game for where you're supposed to be, where your soul has you right now? If you live in New York City, you're naturally going to have more parasites, more toxins in your system than somebody that lives in, a small town in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. But that's what you need in this moment in order to have a balanced life in New York, right? If you move to a small town, then you can adjust accordingly, right? I mean, think about even when you live in a city, you have to have a tougher exterior because cities are more brutal, right? Small towns, people still leave their doors unlocked. So you can be a little softer. It's the same thing. You have to find that matching energy. And I think what happens, Paula, I think, I talk about this all the time. Obviously, well,
Millie.
I see
Come to say hello.
our karma is being in that house with being on our show with us right now. I say this a lot. I've noticed there's so much corruption in the spiritual world. First of all, we have this weird idea that spirituality is just channeling. That's just communication. Like spirituality and channeling can be used as a tool to help you with your own spiritual work. But if you're just using channeling to gossip and to get dirt on people and then that's a form of disassociation. Right?
Interesting. And that's really quite popular these days. Yeah. There are so many channelers.
People just want, and I think like we're the only third density planet where we actually have language. Other third density planets, they speak telepathically. So we do have that ability, but we've kind of lost it because we have physical language. So if we look at other third density planets, they might not even recognize channeling as a thing because they're already doing it on a daily. It's just part of their conversation, right? So it's not even work. It's just part of their conversation. So you have to always ask yourself, like even with these spiritual practices, are you obsessed with tarot cards because you want the gossip or you want to disassociate and you want to live in the world of imagination? Or are you using the tarot cards to help you come to terms with your own karma and things you need to work on?
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
And a lot of people, people talk a lot about the star seeds and, fighting galactic battles at night. Well, that's just the world of illusion too. So even the other timelines and dimensions, those are all just still worlds of illusion. Those are all just games too. So let's say you're a star seed who is...
Well, we chose to be here now.
Exactly. And let's say you are a star seed and you astro travel and you fight means galactic war. Okay. That's still not who you are. That's still just part of the game.
Yeah.
So
just like you chose to live in Atlanta, you also chose to go visit other worlds while you're sleeping.
That's not your spiritual life. That's just another part of your game in the nature.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I just think people don't realize that and they get very attached to it. And I do feel like it's another form of escapism and maybe to deal with some unhappiness in their life, because if they're feeling quite unhappy, then they're like, well, at least when I'm asleep, I'm doing this, and it's distracting you from what's going on here right now that you need to deal with.
That's why I get like with my students in Atlanta, I say this a lot, like I absolutely believe in past life stuff. And I know that there are things in past lives that are affecting me and everyone else today, but there's a fine line with that too. There's a reason we don't remember our past lives.
Yeah, because it would be a huge distraction.
Absolutely. And I find that there's a fine line between using that information to help you and using that information to disassociate from this life. So I find with my students in Atlanta that get really obsessed with past life, like really obsessed with it. And everything that's wrong, they use it as an excuse from a past life. I'll say to them, what is it about this life that what are you running from in this life?
Yeah.
Because
sorry, you go.
Well, right now, Paula is Paula. Paula can only be responsible for Paula right now. You
Yeah.
think about your past lives, if you put all of your identities together in one room that you've been, most of your people you've been wouldn't even like each other.
Yeah,
Right,
probably.
right? Like so this is, and so your identity, your thoughts as a human being in this life are associated with the game you're playing now. Did
Mhm.
you pull karma in from a past life? Absolutely you did. But you're being asked to work it out in this game,
Yes. So, I
not
mean,
in
I've
that one.
had quite a few memories. I mean, only just more recently in the last couple of years, I've never really remembered them before, but just a few things have popped up. Or even when I've kind of tuned in to try and understand where is this deeper issue coming from, sometimes it's come from a childhood, experience, and then other times it's come from a past life. And then that's cropped up. And then, I just go through that and clear it. And then after that, I pretty much just forget about the past life. But I think I can see how people would get very attached to it, especially if it's almost like kind of like reading a book and escaping into that book. It's like you escaping into that past life and focusing on that and living that. But that's not going to help you right now.
It's just building more karma for you. Because
Mm.
you're tossing the game over from this life that you now got to go clean up and do it again. And so like I always laugh because I'm like, no one was ever just like the janitor in a past life. Like no one was ever just like the milkmaid.
No,
You know?
that's too boring.
Like I'm like, are you sure you're not disassociating and living in your imagination of this fairy tale land? I guarantee you, if you go back and look at most of your past lives, you probably don't like those
Well,
people.
Dolores Cannon said that majority of people's lives are just digging potatoes lives. She said they're just boring. You're just living on a farm, doing life, and there's nothing really very exciting about it at all.
Still, and people get very upset when I tell them that. But I'm like, you getting upset by me telling you that proves that I'm right because
Yeah.
you don't want to engage in this life right now. And it's funny
Yeah.
because even in India, like in India, they won't talk about, even though India, like in the Shala, they obviously, I mean, part of Hindu faith is reincarnation. It's part of their
Mhm.
faith. It's just duh, like that happens. But they won't even, like my teacher won't even entertain it.
Yeah, right.
What are you doing now? How are you handling this karma now? It doesn't matter what the other person is doing. That's their
Mhm.
karma.
Yeah.
Well, that person in that life, that's their karma. What are you doing now? How are you choosing to react to it? How are you choosing to work through it? They have to
Mhm.
go on their own journey. What about you? And how messed up would it be if you realized your husband was like your brother in a past life or your father?
That's not great.
Like, that's another reason, too,
Some
guys.
stuff is just better that we don't remember.
Yeah, I just can't, what
That
if
would
your
be really
daughter found
disturbing.
out she was your mother in a past life? That would change the dynamics of the relationship in this life, which
Yeah.
in this life, both your souls have picked to switch for a
Yes.
reason.
For a reason, yeah,
Some
to
of this
learn
stuff,
certain lessons.
so some of this stuff is not, you might be an older soul than your parents. I think I'm an older soul than my parents, but they're still my parents in this life.
Yeah.
I can acknowledge that, but still see them as an authority, a guardian, a authority figure in my life now. And people, and
Mhm.
listen, at 41, they still have to help me with my taxes.
Yeah.
Like I might be an older soul, but that I still go to them for help. I think my boyfriend is an older soul than his parents, but he still respects his parents for being his parents.
Mhm.
That's
Because that's what's happening right here, right now.
that
Mhm.
is the game that his soul and their soul decided they switched it around to play, right? And so we have to, and sometimes it's easier to play the game when this is the only game we know
Mhm.
because we're clear on
Yeah, makes
what we're working with,
sense.
right?
Yeah.
And
Because
so,
I mean, I've heard some people say, that it's quite nefarious that we don't remember, when we're coming in. But I mean, even if you go back to the video game analogy, you kind of, if you knew all the other games that you played, earlier that day, going from a Nintendo to an Xbox to whatever, playing all these different games, it would get very, very confusing. When you're playing that one game, you need to just zone in and focus on that one game so that you can be that character and achieve what you've got to achieve in that one game. So
absolutely.
it really does make sense why we do need to forget when we come here.
It's all done for the highest good. It's all done for the highest good, and you need to trust that. And it's the same thing like with blood types, because that's how my channel first got really big, was going through bloodlines, the whole RH negative thing, and blah blah blah. And people are like, "Well, I think in every life you're." No, you're not RH negative in every life. No, you're not. Are you the same race in every life? No. Are you the same gender in every life? No. Are you the same nationality in every life? No. You're not the same blood type in every life. Even down to the blood. So the reason why I went through bloodlines is because just like our nature, our dispositions, the blood we have is going to inform us on our karma. So if you are for this life, so if you are RH negative, okay, like me, you're going to have probably a little bit more paranormal experiences. Okay, so that can cause trauma. We talked about with Carrie. So what can you learn from that? What is the lesson that your soul is trying to get you to learn from that, for having this natural ability to see beyond the veil and get scratched? And as horrific as that, your soul picked that for a reason. Right? There's a reason why that experience, it's part of your game. But last life, you could have been RH positive and not had any spiritual experiences.
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't make, and that's what gets me so mad. Like, that's why I covered even though I started studying RH negatives because I'm art and I wanted some questions answered for myself. I was like, well, on the side of light, the side of darkness, the path of darkness, they believe in a pecking order. They believe that there are elite humans and then there are not elite. They believe in royalty. That's where royalty comes from, is the pecking order, right? But on the side of light, we believe everybody is equal, different, but equal.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. I don't believe RH negatives are better or worse than anybody else by any stretch of the imagination. And the reason why the darkness believes that is because they feel like they can utilize the abilities of an RH negative for nefarious purposes by their natural abilities. So let's say you're A positive. Let's say that's your blood type. Well, the A antigen, along with the rhesus factor, is going to create an energy. It's not going to be the same as an O negative's creation of energy. Just like apples, we talked about this last time, just like apples have one nutrient and green beans have another. They're still nutrients. They still provide information. They're just different. So imagine if we all knew the strengths of our own blood types and the weaknesses so that we could just work together. And where I'm strong, I'll provide help. Where you're strong, you provide help. We help each other. That's what the side of light does. And I've seen a lot of people, especially in the truther world, either want to totally annihilate RH negatives, which is scary because that's, I don't know if I can say this word on YouTube. We'll say shmenicide. I think you guys know what I'm talking about, shmenicide. And that's also another form of like race. Like that's so different than judging someone by the color of their skin.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just innocent people going, and that's not fair. That's not fair.
That's what the Yahtzees did.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say the N word, but the Yahtzees, that's what they did. No, you're no different. You're no different than the Yahtzees, right? And then there are people that think that RH negatives are special. And therefore no, darling. No, we're all special. All of us.
And we all have gifts and abilities. And it's just some people tap into it straight away, but that's part of the choice that they made. And I know plenty of people that haven't always been that thrilled about the gifts and abilities that they've had because it's made their upbringing very challenging.
Yeah, we talked about it with Carrie. But for me, because I get scratched a lot, and you know, I've had it's been a horrible lesson I've had to learn in this life. And it felt very out of control because it was something but when I started studying RH negatives and I realized that's part of being RH negative, and there's so many people like me with the same blood type I felt a huge liberation that really helped me go, oh. And of course, this was after I'd started my yoga study too. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this is just part, this is just part of my prakriti. Now, this is not something to be afraid of. It sucks when it happens, but this is just it's just like going to math class. Right?
It's a little bit more eventful than that, but
I hated math class growing up. I hate math so much. It's just so, to me, I was like, it's just
I didn't mind maths.
I wasn't
very good at chemistry.
I was like, this is so uninspiring. I'm bored. I love my English classes and history classes, obviously. And I'm like, oh, I hated math class. Well, I hate this. This is just like math class. Like, there's a lesson that I need to learn here, right? There's something that my soul has opened up to in this life for a lesson for me, not to make me better. If anything, it means that I got to learn from this, right? Like, so and that's what I hope people understand is like, and I see that a lot in fake spirituality, is people's egos are inflating like crazy because they're using a false sense of self in spirituality to deem themselves better than other people.
Yeah.
And that's not spirituality. Ram Dass gave a great speech. I'll see if I can find it. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description box below. It was called something, I might be paraphrasing this wrong, but the act of becoming nobody. Because in spirituality, everybody wants to be somebody.
Yeah.
We all want to be like, well, in this life, I did this, and at night, I'm Xena Warrior Princess, and I'm Galactus, and I'm doing this, and I'm riding a dragon, and I'm so great. Me, 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 me. I'm so great. Aren't you glad I'm here? Me, me, me. That's not spirituality.
No. And it's become very popular these days, you know. So many people would have huge channels being...
Well, it's because they're feeding the people's ego. They're not telling them the truth. The act of the spiritual person is to become nobody. To be the nobody. That's why I love, I can always tell when someone's a fake spiritualist versus a real spiritualist by the way they dress. You ever seen those people that like wear tons of mala beads? And that wear flowy clothes and they like put a costume on?
Yeah.
Some of the most advanced people I know spiritually, they dress like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons.
Like Ned Flanders.
They literally like wear golf.
He had a pretty good body under that shirt.
I know. They tuck their shirts in. They wear a belt that you would never know it looking at them. You would never know. They don't wear their first of all, mala beads are not supposed to be worn. That's another thing too. Mala beads.
Well, that's for the meditation practice.
They're for japa meditation. And actually, my boyfriend has mala beads because he does japa meditation. I've never seen them. They stay in a box. It's just for him.
Oh.
He pulls them out and he does it by himself. So it's very sacred. So people who literally use mala beads for japa for the right reason, you'll never see their mala beads.
Wow. And then other people are just flaunting it, walking around.
Look how great I am wearing my mala beads. I'm so spiritual. I'm so enlightened. Like my cult. No, that's not, because this is the act of being nobody. My teacher who just passed away was probably one of the most wealthy men in South India. Now, his family wasn't always wealthy. It's actually the Westerners that got them wealthy because we brought their teaching, that's what generated a bigger business for them. My teacher, being as wealthy as he was, had 2 pairs of shorts he rotated in between all these years. 2 pairs of Nike shorts, a red pair and a blue pair.
Wow.
You alternated between them every day. That's what he wore to teach every other day. And it'd be like, dude, you have enough money to buy more shorts. But it was like, it didn't matter to him. And he would wear like some t-shirts, and some of the t-shirts were like Christmas t-shirts. He'd be wearing in like
in the middle of
like, because it didn't matter to him. It was just the clothes he was wearing to teach.
Just the clothes. Yeah.
He wasn't trying to, he never wore mala beads. He was just teaching.
Yeah.
He was just a teacher.
And that's something I actually really respect and appreciate about you as well, because obviously since we've been working together on our platform, I've learned so much more about all of the knowledge that you know. But just, I mean, you have shared a bit over the years, but also I do feel like you have kept a lot. Also, you don't go bragging about everything that you know.
Oh, thank you.
And you have an incredible amount of knowledge. And you could so easily have a big ego if you wanted to, but you're so down to earth, and I love that.
I'll tell you a funny story. So when I first started my YouTube channel, I didn't say anything about what I did offline because it was 2020, and I was just like, I'm just gonna focus on these deep dives. I didn't really say anything for a while about like what I did for a living off of, because I wasn't. I mean, we were all in our houses, so like. Yeah, there was no show. I mean, we opened up AYA pretty quickly, but then I started slowly talking about it more, and especially when I started noticing a lot of controlled opposition in the, because this is a spiritual war, and I still believe this. People can hate me for saying this. I think most of the truthers are not ascending, just by seeing their behavior online, and they're so deluded and they're so delusional, and they've been taken on this ride, and their ego is huge, and they think they're better. I mean, we get frustrated with the normies. We get frustrated with them, of course we do, because it's like, oh, don't you see what's happening? But
sometimes they're just more down to earth and real.
And they're kind, and they're not judging people, but we are. So who's the more ascended person? I'm not talking about the raging, lefty. I'm talking about just your average Joe
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
is not, still trust Big Brother, like, and we don't know the outcome of someone's soul. That's their business and that's their karma. And that might be the rules of their game. Their soul might have agreed to like not wake up and to live, we don't know. And so we can't judge that, but we can look at how kind they are. And I see truthers like behaving badly. And I'm like, you are acting. I mean, I've said this before. Some of the stuff I've seen on Telegram, I was like, I think I would rather have the establishment we have now than you, because you are awful. You are horrible. The amount of judging you're doing, and that it doesn't matter. What you know about the truth of the world means fuck all. And a lot of truthers hate hearing that because that's their ego, right? Oh, but I know about this and I know about that. That's
But
just
how do we even know if any of it is true anyway?
Exactly. We have
and how many things have been predicted that never happened
because of junk conspiracy. They put the bad guys put junk conspiracy, and that's why I say so many people realize that mainstream media will say, because I'm trying to watch the algorithms, they aren't being the most honest, right? We'll just say that the media was like it was entertainment basically. It was like a Hollywood movie, and they realize that. But instead of working on themselves to pause and realize, how did I get duped? What did I miss? They immediately jumped over to YouTube and started following people on YouTube. So it's the same thing. Nothing has changed. You went from following one.
They're still getting lies told to them.
Exactly.
Believing lies.
But these lies, though, that are being told to them on YouTube by the controlled opposition are brushing their egos up. That they're better and they know that, ha ha ha, we know the truth. Well, do you?
No.
Do you?
No, because we don't. Really? People can say that they know what's going on behind the scenes. But
where's your evidence? Well, watching a YouTube channel is not research.
No.
That's why I always encourage people to do their research, because you need to be looking into this yourself. You don't even rely on me to tell you what these things are, Paula or somebody else. I can talk about them on my channel, but I want you to look it up too, because I don't want to be your leader. I don't want a teacher's job is to eventually not be needed.
Yeah.
I want to be the nobody in the corner. I don't want to be the somebody, because that's ego and that's fake and it's illusionary and it's not real.
Yeah.
And my story, so I started doing all these shows with all these people, like getting invited on their shows, and I was backstage one. I'll never forget this. It was after a show was over, and there was I'm not going to say who they were. There were two other people on the camera. And they were, I just watching them talk, and they're like blowing each other's egos up about how great they are. And I forgot what the conversation was. And we were just chit-chatting about, I think we were like playing another show or something. And we mentioned something. I was like, yeah, no. And then I just packed my bags up and went to India. And they both just stopped talking and just kind of looked at me and were like, you went to India? I was like, yeah, I just went to India to study with my teacher in India. And I think at that moment, and that's the thing, like so I appreciate you saying that. That's the thing I hope that translated well. Like, it was shocking for them that I was just sitting there quietly while they were blowing each other's egos up, but I was the one that had actually been to India.
Yeah, actually done the work.
Actually done. And these two people, I'm going to start being more honest about this. The training courses they had done were scams. Most of these spiritual courses you do are scams.
Because you can't learn all of that information in 200 hours or whatever the training is. Yeah.
I mean, I'm 19 years in. I'm still learning. I'm 19 years in. And so if you do any courses associated with the Yoga Alliance, you got scammed. And you would know that if you actually researched it. It's a scam. There was a huge, back in like 2015, there was a huge like boycott the Yoga Alliance, because people were starting to realize that they didn't have the authority to make people yoga. A white person, and I'm not about, I don't like cultural appropriation. I think cultures are meant to be shared. But within the rules of the game, you have to respect your culture. If you are a white person or a black person or an Asian, not an Indian, but like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, whatever. You can't make somebody a yoga teacher. You don't have the authority, because that's not your culture. In India, they have a culture. It's based on the parampara system, the parampar, where the param guru becomes the holder of the lineage.
Yeah.
And you go through, basically, it's like going back to college. I basically went back to college, university. And they're the ones that have the authority, because it's their heritage.
Yeah.
So if you're going
This makes sense.
yes, if you're going to a training course in 200 hours, some white woman named Jennifer is going to sign off on a piece of paper to get, no offense to Jennifer's, but just to make it, you got scammed.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a yoga teacher. You're not. What
Yeah.
I can do is I can have somebody assist me. I can make somebody my assistant, which we have to have assistants in the mice room. And I start training them on how to actually move bodies and how to work with people. But then they have to go. They have to get a letter of recommendation from me to go to the main shala to start that educational system to become teachers themselves. Now, after you become a teacher, after years, you're authorized, you're still assisting. It's like going through medical school where you go through residency. You don't come back with your authorization and then you just start your own program. You're still having to assist. You're still having to learn. It took a long time for me to be able to be the head teacher of my own Mysore, because you become the head teacher at that point. It's like, and I think what happens, Paula, is I think what the controlled or the establishment, the Illuma Shmati has done is they fed into this ego. We're in this place in our world where everybody's so effing entitled. Drives me crazy. We're so entitled. I want to be a yoga teacher, so therefore I'm going to be. Okay, you want to be a yoga teacher, but you got to go through the education to become one. You can't just say you're one because you want to be one.
Yeah.
Right? You got to actually go to school and learn. And so we have all these like dipshit teachers out there, teachers that are hurting students, teaching the wrong.
I was just about to say, it's dangerous. And it's like what you're saying with going back to the fasting thing. I had no idea because I thought, well, yeah, I've read a few books about it. I've watched some podcasts about it. I thought, I kind of know what I'm doing. But no, there's none of this spiritual side of information or about the doshas or anything like that in any of these fasting books. And this is what happens is people are doing these online courses. And I mean, look, I've done online courses too, so I'm not saying that, but you've just got to be really careful and be discerning what you're getting into, because this is where it's so dangerous and people are getting hurt because not all the information is there. And exactly like what you've gone through in all your studies in India, there's so much more to it. Like you're telling me about how, like, you've got to know when a student can be pushed and when they can't, and when you need to let them just sit back. And if they're going through an emotional kind of moment or breakdown or whatever, you need to just let them go through that. You don't just learn that in like a 200-hour class. It's just so much more involved.
Absolutely.
Same with the doctor. You don't want a doctor that's just done a 200-hour online course doing surgery on you.
You want the most experienced doctor out there. Well, and it also goes like, so on Christmas Eve, I went into AYA. And, Todd is the master teacher there. He's the head teacher, but I'm also an authorized teacher. And I some of the students remembered me. They always tease me that apparently I'm a lot tougher than him, but that's also different because I'm a female. So there's a different energy with female. Like there's some stuff he can do with his body that I can't do with mine. So I have to be verbally tougher sometimes on students. So what was funny was, so I got to the shala, we brought donuts and coffee because it was Christmas Eve, and I brought Ravi, and we have this, like, he has this old church pew from his great, it's kind of cool. So I sat down and I'm like watching the room, and his assistants are assisting, and he was like, you can, if you want, just get up and start helping. But I pulled back on a lot of adjustments with people because, especially some of the more intense adjustments, because I don't know what Todd's doing with them. And so as a teacher, especially in a MISO room, a head teacher, a master teacher with all these students, he has a plan for every single student, and he's adjusting them particular ways due to what he's working on. And so for me to come in and adjust differently might disrupt the patterning that he's created. And I was telling that to his assistants. I was like, listen, even though, don't defer to me, even though I'm an authorized teacher, I want you to do what Todd has told you to do, because he has a plan and he's taught you how to adjust these people in a particular. Let me handle like the little adjustments that don't, that aren't going to disrupt. But as an author, I know that, whereas a young teacher is not going to understand that there are different ways. Like when I'm holding a foot, if a foot's extended out in a posture, I might catch the foot under the heel and move the calf in a certain way because of an energy cycle I've noticed with that person's foot. But other people, I'm going to adjust it differently. I might hold the foot by depending on how they're stepping. So if I notice a person like internally rotates too much or externally rotates too much, or if I notice the toe is lifting off the floor too much, which is disconnecting from Mola Bandha, when I go to adjust that student, I'm going to use my hands in a particular way to move the muscles to start to create a new pattern for that person. But the person next to them is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
Right? I have a student right now I'm working with who has terrible knee issues, and knee issues are really common. And energetically speaking, there's two things going on with knee issues. Knees connect to your kidneys. Kidneys are fear of the future. So most knee issues are coming from a rooted fear of, depending on left or right. If it's right, it's masculine, so you might be more afraid, subconsciously afraid of how you're going to support yourself. So that's just stuff that's playing out with the knees. Well, there's also another reason your knees could be hurting too, and that could be coming from your hips. So if you've got emotional scarring in your hips, because hips are like the junk drawer of the body, we push miscellaneous emotions we don't know what to do with or don't want to deal with in our hips. And that emotion gets so stuck that sometimes when we go to twist, we actually twist in our knee to avoid the hip. This is all subconscious. So when knee issues come up, there are one of two things that are going on. And for me as a teacher, when a student first tells me they have knee issues, I have to actually not adjust and just watch them practice for a moment so I can see what's actually happening in the way that their body is patterning that's causing the knee. So if the hips are aligned, then I know it's coming from more psychological fear of the future. But the hips are not aligned, I know that it actually has got nothing to do with fear of the future, and it's got something else that's going on in the hips that they don't want to deal with, so they're pushing it into the knee joint. And so that's going to affect the way I adjust the student. So with the student I'm working with now, I'm not going to say her name, but it's her hips. And so I literally, every time I practice with her, she panicked. And I said, no, don't panic. It's my job. This is my job. There are certain patterns in your body that you are not going to be able to break on your own. That's why Ida Rolf, who does Rolfing, she figured that out. You have to have an external force come in to help unstick this energy. You're not going to be, it's too heavy, it's too deep for you to do it by yourself, and it's too subconscious. This is not going to take one practice. This is going to take many practices. So every single day she comes to my class, I am on her hips with particular postures, and I am holding, literally, because her hips have gotten so tight that when I adjust her hips into their proper place to force the hips to open, she can't balance. Wow. So I have to hold the hips while holding her body to train her body to open. And this is not just about muscle training. This is about opening a path of energy so that her body can start to learn this new. That's my job as the teacher. Now, a new teacher is not going to be aware of this. That's why you have to apprentice and assist with a master teacher, because they're watching them. They're the ones that are subtly going to be able to show you what you're looking for. We had so a lot of times we look at things like headstands, Shirshasana. It's the king of asanas. It's a very important posture people should learn. Now, it's important because it's flipping your spine upside down. Whether your legs ever come off the ground or not, I don't really care. All I want is your pelvic floor upside down, because it has to do with Kundalini coming down the elixir of it coming down the spine. So as long as your pelvic floor is upside down and you're on your head and you're pushing through your arms, I don't give a shit if your feet ever come up. Listen, I have seen it all in that room. I have seen people forward and back handspring millions of times. I've done it myself, put my legs behind my head, stood up with my leg behind. I've seen it all. That doesn't impress me. I don't give a shit what your physical practice actually looks like. What I care about is the work you're putting into your own self, right? And so when it comes to headstands, a lot of times I always tell people, if your teacher is telling you to try a headstand against the wall, do not go back to that class. That is so dangerous. If you can't come up into a headstand without using the wall, you don't need to be coming up into a headstand. Your body's not ready for it. Your mind's not ready for it. You're going to crush your neck.
Wow.
That's going to be the karma that's going to happen. So in Ashtanga, we don't use walls for headstands. We have you learn away from the wall. I don't care if it takes 10 years. Because that's not the point. Your legs coming up are not the fucking point. The point is that your spine's getting up. Sorry, I get so passionate because so many people get so injured.
I just think, but this is just so important that we're just not taught this information.
It's not about.
I know you're talking specifically to yoga, to Ashtanga yoga, but just in general, man, we are just inundated with so much information. That's just half of it, just part of it.
Yeah. But people want to do that. They want their legs up because it's an ego thing.
Yeah, because it looks great.
When your legs come up in a headstand, let me tell you what happens when you finally get your leg behind your head, or you catch a bind, or do a bat, whatever it is you're working. You know what happens? Nothing. You just do the pose. No balloons fall from the ceiling. You're not all of a sudden hit with enlightenment. Nothing happens. You just do the pose. And then guess what? You got more poses to learn. So why are you, let's work thoroughly where we are, and let's get the lesson, because it's all about the journey. That's a cheesy quote, but it's true. It's all about the journey. It's not about the destination. Right? And the minute, like for people, when they first get the headstand, they get excited and there's, yay, that's great, that's great. But then in a week's time, it's no big deal anymore. It's whatever.
Yeah, you're just doing it every day, and it's just like, yeah, no biggie. Yeah.
No big deal. So when you're in a headstand, if your feet are still on the floor, you're still in a headstand. The action of the posture, the potency, the alchemy, the prescription, what we're looking for is still activating. Right?
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, the legs coming up, it has to do with core strength. It has to do with inner thigh strength. It has to do with arms. I see people all the time. So the first headstand you should be learning is like this. I see people come in and want to do the tripod because they can do that. And I'll say, what are you doing? Well, I can do it this way. Well, I don't care if you can do it that way. That way is not important right now. We need to do it this way for a reason. There's a chakra here. You've got chakras in your hands. You're pulling your arms together. It's coming from that heart chakra, pulling through the vayus of the arm into the back of the head as you push off the floor and pull your stomach up as the elixir of Kundalini comes down. So riddle me this, Batman. Why are you using your hands on the floor with your head down? We got to get your hands here. If all you care about is performing the headstand, then you're in the wrong class. This is a spiritual class. If you want to practice gymnastics, I can give you a name of a gym. But right now we're working your body, and honey, you're like 45 years old. You're not gonna qualify for the Olympics. I hate to tell you that. That ship sailed, right? Right? You're not gonna be auditioning from Cirque du Soleil. Like they're young too. Like, you know. So it's learning these things, like learning how to hold, because there are different, at the end of second series, there's 7 different headstands where you're placing your hands, like one's like this, one's with the arms in front. And you have to actually hold it and dismount, so hop out into chaturanga. So in order to get to that, which doesn't matter if you ever get there or not, we have to learn the first one first.
Right.
So we've got to structure the body in a way, energetically, not just physically, but also energetically. Because there is hatha or hatha, which is not, it's not hatha, guys, it's hatha. This is a Sanskrit word, sun, moon. This is prana, apana. This is energy in the body, moving energy with inhale, exhale. That's creating vayus and pathways. Any type of exercise, any exercise is hatha yoga. Because anytime your heart rate is increased and there's heavier breathing, that becomes hatha yoga, whether it's a run, a swim, a dance, whatever. But within hatha, there's all these different alchemies happening, right? There's these different, and a lot of what's happening, it makes me so mad, because honestly, Paula, I love all of my students so much. I find human beings to be so fascinating. And when you get to know your students and it makes me emotional. You get to know their lives, and like you see, I get emotional. You see how hard they're working?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always tell them all the time, like I laugh with Cindy, I'm like, pretty yoga is boring. Pretty yoga is boring. Messy yoga is what's interesting.
Yeah, when you're that's where you have big breakthroughs.
And I watch my students come in, and I've watched them improve and evolve, and I've watched them and their lives change. And it makes me so fucking pissed that there are people arrogant enough out there to think they can do a 200-hour course. And then you're ruining people's lives, because this practice is so potent that instead of healing, helping somebody heal, you're creating what we call crazy making. You're making them crazy because it affects the mind. All this alchemy we're doing, the body is the mind field. So if you're fucking with the body and you don't know what you're doing, you're messing with their minds. And that's going to have an impact on their lives. And if you're not willing to carry that responsibility, you don't need to be teaching.
Yeah.
And for us, those of us who are willing to carry that responsibility, we take it very seriously, and we're continuing to deepen our education, to study. I watch my friend Cindy, who comes on, she's going to be on she's constantly studying. She's constantly deepening. And I see these people, and all they care about is their Lululemon sweatpants and their braided hair. In a Mysore room, most people have their damn sports bras on inside out. Right? Like,
They just don't care. That's not what's important. That's not what you're there for. It's not for the
Right.
clothing. It's not
It
for the
is
looking.
it is
Yeah.
so important that we bring spirituality back, and not everybody's going to be a teacher. That
Yes.
might not be your dharma. Your dharma might be to practice, but it might not. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, sometimes teaching, nothing's going to wreck your practice more than teaching.
Yeah,
Because
right.
you're using your body in so many different ways that when you go to your practice, you're like, what happened? Like, what, like, your shoulders
Yeah.
get tighter because you're dropping people back, standing them up. So
Yeah.
it does complicate things when you become a teacher. And so that
It's a
might not be.
huge commitment.
Yeah. And for me, I know for Ashtanga, like we've been talking, I talked to you, Cindy, my partner, like we're going to be doing an Ashtanga beginner course, but I'm only going to be going up to quarter primary series because this practice is dangerous. And I know people's egos. And even though they might not be aware of it, they're going to be trying to do these advanced practices or postures without having, and there are advanced postures in primary series without having someone there to help them, and they're going to injure themselves. And that's my responsibility, even on the virtual platform, to like cut it at a certain point and be like, this is safe to learn online, but if you really like this practice, I will help you find a teacher in your area that is good that you can go to. Because I cannot, in good faith, ethically, put you in a situation that I know could be dangerous.
Yeah.
And some people aren't.
And that's what makes me have so much respect for you, Bryce.
Well, thank you.
And and I'm honored to work with you because I feel exactly the same way. I mean, I'm not a yoga teacher or anything, but I feel exactly the same way with the quantum healing and energy healing work that I do. I don't not want to be giving anybody any wrong ideas, or you've just got to be so careful with what you're doing and what you're taking on board.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's hard. I mean, I know if like you have to, and as a Meister teacher, you have to be tough. Like you have to have tough love. Like I think that's why I got because I can't get emotional in the classroom. I have to be very neutral because if your student's having a breakdown.
Yeah, and if you're getting emotional.
Right. Even though you as the human, me as Bryce, I want to hug them and be like, let's go get a chocolate bar and like, I have to be neutral because I have to allow them to have that breakdown without giving more fuel to the fire, right? I have to allow them to have the very natural and raw breakdown because that's what the practice is asking of me and them. Now, after class, and if they want to text me or call me, I'll be more than happy to like talk them off the ledge and like but during the Mysore room, during the moment that this is happening, it's important that I stay neutral, and that's hard to do. That takes a lot of training. And there have been times like in the Mysore room, especially where I've had to like, after a student has broken down, I've had to excuse myself to the back office for a moment. They don't know that's why I'm going back there, but just to kind of take a deep breath to reground myself, to be that neutral, person.
Yeah,
and
you need
sometimes
to be strong for them.
yeah, and then sometimes the room gets so damn serious and everybody's so focused that you have to like crack a joke. I'll never forget. There was this one because you don't want them to be. It's serious, but you also need to have some humor too. Like you need to be able to like laugh because it's just a game at the end of the day. I heard this one time I was assisting. This was years ago at AYA years ago, and the room got real serious. Like you could feel tension. And I looked at Todd. Of course, he's the main teacher, and he's watching the students. And all of a sudden, one of our students was like struggling with the posture, and he just goes, "God, you make that look so hard." And he said that at the right moment because it broke the tension of the room and everybody started laughing. And he found a student that would be able to laugh at that, like not one that would go cry and
that would take it personally. Yeah,
like, God, you make that look hard, and and she started laughing and everybody started laughing, and so so teachers have to be able to navigate that as well when there's a group tension. And that's too, Paula. I'm actually I need to send this to you. Do you mind if I share screen quickly? Because I want to show kind of in conversation. I just got done filming. I apologize about the lighting, guys. A 90-minute, I turned the volume off. It's a 90-minute, kind of what I'm calling like a flush and restore class. So 60 minutes of flushing and then 30 minutes of restoring at the end. And in this class, I can't wait for you to teach. I need to send it to you because it just, in this class, I actually go deep in the voiceover. I go deep into like what's actually happening energetically in your body.
Awesome.
Emotionally, because it's a tough class, and with the sweat and using the hips and it's cycling up into the heart. So I'm having you inhale the heart, which is the chakra. And I see I'm singing with the music too. You can have fun with this as well. So the heart, let's pause it here. So the heart is right here. We know that's here. We've talked about the heart. And then we have the lungs. Right? So a lot of throughout my lifetime anyway, we've been taught that the heart pumps the blood. Well, we're now learning that that's not true. The heart is actually a valve, and what pumps the heart is the lungs. So the lungs and the heart come together. They're one and the same. They work together. And this is also a representation of Anahata, which is the fourth chakra. Now, the fourth chakra is important. I talk a lot about the lower three because that's your humanity. Everybody wants to be up here in the third eye and be all woo, but that's not really what's important. What is important is in being in your lower three, because that's your humanity, from your perineum all the way up to Manipura, which is in your solar plexus, and you have your heart. Well, the heart is the binding force that brings your spirit into your body, right? So it's right here, and that binds the upper and lower chakras. Now, if we look at exercise, and there's an upped heart rate in both the anaerobic work and aerobic work. So when the heart rate is up, we see it more intensely in aerobic work, because that's kind of the whole point of aerobic work. When the heart rate is lifted up, the lungs have to pump harder to push more blood out through the body, which also then incorporates more oxygen. Now, oxygen we call in Sanskrit pranayama, which is the extension of life force. In the Bible, it says God breathed life into man and man stood up. So the hatha, the inhale and the exhale, inhale is the pranic rising sun, exhale is the setting moon. So the blood, the sacred DNA, the blood and the oxygen, the sacred oxygen, work together, coming from that heart chakra that brings the spirit, because the oxygen is very spirit, right? Spirit based, whereas blood is very, you can't really see oxygen, right? But you feel it. You can kind of see it when it's cold, but you feel it. Whereas blood you see. So these are two marriages of a spiritual force and a physical force coming together to create the Shakti, which is the gain. And it's located right here in the body. So it extends out through the arms, and then extends blood out through the legs, which then connects to most of these classes I have you do barefoot, because I want you to really work into the foot, the big toe being the base of Mula Bandha, the arch of the foot coming up into Uddiyana Bandha, which is the belly button, the pulling up of the experience of Kundalini, which comes into a strong core. And so in this video, I can't wait for you to, because after I did my voiceover, I was like, I hope I didn't over teach that. So I can't wait for you to, but I just kept, I want people to understand. And with these videos we're doing on this.
And I love that. I love that you include that information, because it just having that knowledge of why you're doing that move, I just find that so helpful for me personally.
Me too. It's what keeps me motivated. Like if I'm just doing exercises to look good in a bathing suit, I'm gonna get real bored real fast, and I'm gonna be mad at myself. But if I'm doing it to awaken, and the thing too is and I say this in this video, we can talk about the chakras all we want. We can talk about the chakras until we're blue in the face. We can talk about the bandhas till we're blue in the face, but none of that matters unless we actually activate them.
Yeah.
And how are you going to activate them? By moving your body, because that's where they reside. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing it too. And I think people have thought I've been crazy for saying exercise is the foundation of spirituality. We'll go back and that's what it was because this is where how you're the conduit. Your body is the conduit of these living experiences. And so when you actually move your body and you sweat and the lungs, we all fantasize about flying one day and getting on a dragon and flying. You guys, you already have wings. Those are your lungs.
Oh, wow.
So when you create this level of, we'll say fitness for lack of a better word, and you're able to jump higher with the inhale, is that not taking off?
Wow.
So why are we in this land of make-believe, reading tarot cards about fighting aliens every night and being a Xena warrior princess on a dragon, when actually that reality is here in our waking body? It's all here waiting for you. When we talk about levitation, that's, Jesus walking on water. That's levitation. That's a form of flying. That comes from pranayama inhaling. So if you know people who practice well, let's take the headstand or a handstand, for example. Do you come up in a handstand on an inhale or an exhale? An inhale. Because it's that taking off. If you try to push up into a handstand on an exhale, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to, because that's the energy of coming down. So the beauty of getting your heart rate up too and having that discomfort with the breath is you're actually learning the breath. You're learning. God breathed life into man and man stood up. So every time you take that inhale, that's not just from when you were born. That's every effing time you take an inhale. You're flying, you're rising, the lungs are expanding. And then as everything goes up, it must also come down. So when you exhale, there's also beauty in the exhale too. That's the solidness, the rest, the recuperation of the moon. So we look at darkness and light, sun and moon. The light is the only thing that can create. We know this from spiritual texts, from looking at the establishment, all that kind of stuff. They take from the light and they invert. But let's look at darkness in its proper template, the way God created darkness to be. When the sperm hits the egg, there's a flash of light. That creation starts. But then what happens for the next 9 months? The baby grows in the darkness, in that light. That light sparks that, but then the cocooning happens. At night, when the world is quiet and you're sleeping, that heaviness of the moon is helping you heal from the activation of the sun you took in during the day. So when we look at that with the breath, with Hatha, the sun, moon, the inhale brings us up, the exhale brings us back down into rest. The inhale brings us up, the exhale brings us back down into rest. So we're having this experience, we're moving this energy through our body, then the energy comes out the hands, out the body. We become the conduit, the activation of these chakras. Talking about something doesn't really bring it into the existence. It's the action that brings it into the existence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why people who exercise tend to start looking younger. They because they're bringing that life, that vitality.
Into the cells everywhere, organs,
everywhere.
Everything.
So I did this, and I actually want to do more of these. And so I want to do more of the 90 minutes where we look at like really incorporate, because 30 minutes great here and there, but some days you want to do a long practice where you're really thoroughly just going through everything to really integrate it. And
so you think doing like a 90-minute one's like equivalent to doing like a good detox?
Yes. Well, that's what you're doing too. So if you're doing like, and that's why I called it a flush. We have a 45-minute flush that I'll pull that up as well. But it helps flush. Like if you're and flushing, I say this in the description. I'm like, it's not, you could be constipated. Yeah, that could be a great reason to flush because you're constipated and nothing's going to jiggle. You're colon more than jumping up and down. But it's not just the physicality. Sometimes you could feel stuck in your life and stuck creatively. Yes. So if you're stuck in your life, you're probably not going to want to, at that point, you're probably not going to want to do super anaerobic stuff. You're probably actually going to want to do more aerobic stuff because it's flush and it's going to flush that stuck energy out. Right?
Yeah.
And so with this one though, after I get into some stretches where once we get really hot, we're going to go deep into like opening up, using that heat to direct it into like the hips here. So I'm telling you, like, flex your foot, make sure the energies just got real hot for an hour. Now we're going to use that heat to push the energy into the hips to move through the, and here I am doing a headstand. So I talk about here and I show you different parallels. Well, actually, let me just, I'm not playing any of the music here, or my voice, but let's actually back it up a little bit. So I show you here different experiences of the headstand. Speaking of headstand, we'll just play it for a second. And I'll play into it. And as I show you here, since we've been talking about headstand, once I come into the headstand here, I actually in my voiceover talk about this. So let's say that you're in my class and I'm having you set up for a Shirshasana, but you've never gone up into a headstand before. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you set your arms up, create that tripod, open up your hands, place the back of your head into your hands where that chakra is, where the chakra of your hands through your heart come in, and tuck your toes under. Now, if you can't do a headstand, I'm going to have you hold here. I'm just going to have you hold here. And when you can lift your legs up together, so we don't want to kick up, we want to lift them up with control. If you lift up, if you kick up, you're going to kick over. That's just physics. So you have to have that control. Now, whether my legs are up in the air or not doesn't really matter. What matters is my spine is upside down. Now, here in this class, I'm actually breaking the rules of Ashtanga, because in Ashtanga yoga, we don't separate the legs. We keep them very much glued together for a reason. But in a second, you're going to see me bring the legs out to the side and split them, because that creates a different path for those who can go up in a headstand. For those who can't go up, they're just going to stay their legs on the ground. But those who can go up, this is going to create a different reaction through the vayus in the perineum, right? And there's different experiences of this. I know I'll hold this because we're supposed to hold it. I don't hold it for 15 minutes here, but we're supposed to hold it for like 15 minutes. And then I come down at one point into the half pike. Now this I say is super advanced because my butt's way over my head. So I've hollowed out my belly, which is called Uddiyana Bandha Kriya, which is actually pulling the organs way under the ribs. This is only for people who've been practicing for like 10 years, right? So I've added that in as an option.
Very easy.
Well, I've added this in for an option for people who want it. But other than that, you're just keeping your feet on the floor, right? Because there's never there's never a finish line. We're always going to continue to grow and evolve, right?
Yeah.
So even for those who have an quote unquote advanced practice, they're still looking for that challenge, right? And then of course, when you come down, you don't lift your head. You keep your head down because you need all those fluids to go back to where they came from. So anyway, and then of course at the end, I do a meditation with you guys at the end, letting the body go, coming into some breathing. I talk a lot about the breath here. Now that your body's hot and open and sweaty, really following the inhale and the exhale. Inhale and the exhale, just keeping your focus on the inhale and the exhale. How is the body responding? And so so with that, as I said, Tamara said that in my chart, like you're going to take all this knowledge and put it into more modern stuff. And that's the beautiful thing about this platform, Paula, because as I was saying with the Ashtanga, I would panic. That would stress me out if I was only teaching Ashtanga virtually, because I want to be there to put my hands on you because I don't want you to get hurt. Mm-hmm. But with what we're doing with a lot of these classes, with the fusion classes, it's a lot safer. But you're still getting the same. It's the same spiritual work. It's the same work.
But it's just in a safer way. It's just, I love it. I love it so much.
And I have said we're going to be eventually taking these classes and filming them at AYA when we have, because it's better looking and the lighting is obviously better. But I actually am kind of like shooting in the house because it's real.
Yes.
Right? It's
because
real.
That's what we're doing. I mean, I'm practicing either in my front room or in my bedroom.
Yep. Here's the 45-minute one. Like, look at Robbie. Like, and it's obviously.
I love it. I shot. Scott's always lying on the bed.
He's always sleeping. That's his karma. He's always sleeping. So
yeah.
This is obviously, you can tell it's a different time of day because the light's different, and that's just real. And here I am. I'm doing a class for you. This is a 45-minute totally flush class. So there is no we'll go back a little. There is no restore here. It's just flushing. So I shot this specifically for coming out of Christmas. And I say that like, if you're in a holiday situation, that you are actually you can flush. Like if you've got some food hangovers, I also have another one, and these are the 3 new ones that I filmed. We'll quickly show this too. Let me make sure I turn the sound off because you don't want to hear that blaring. I filmed this actually at Sacred Garden Yoga. So I did like an all-level full body class where I divided it into strength, stamina, stretch. This was shot at Sacred Garden. This was like at 3 o'clock in the morning before I taught.
Wow.
And this is low impact. I did this totally low impact for people, and so we're really looking through. As you can tell, I'm sweating my ass off, that's your detoxing. Your body is detoxing. And so that's going to be up. So now we're going to come into the stretch portion where we're really, and this is all low impact. So this is beginner friendly. I even don't, I purposely won't fold as far for beginner friendly, just to give you permission to be where you are in your work. Because it doesn't matter how far you fold as long as you're feeling that resistance, if that makes sense. And so that's one thing I'm so excited about our platform, because it gives me the opportunity to take this knowledge that I was blessed to learn from India and share it globally with work that can accommodate the average person. Yeah. So, but you're still getting the benefit of the theory. So anyway, guys, I'm going to put all that down. I know we've been going for a long time. I love, this is one of my favorite topics.
I love learning about it because this is all new for me and I'm just loving it so much. And I'm loving doing your exercise because it's so much more fun than what I've been doing in the past. I think the problem with me not being consistent, because I was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not being consistent? And I realize now because I was bored and I was doing it more for vanity reasons because I thought I had to be healthy. Like, I want to age as well as I can naturally. Yeah. And so I just thought, well, I have to, I need to exercise. But doing it with your classes and all the little fun bits you add in and the tips and the spiritual information, I love it so much. So it's great work, guys.
It's so fun to make. And and that, again, you guys, the world works in mysterious ways. Before 2016, I would have never taught it. It would just have been Ashtanga. But then when I broke my sacrum, I had to figure out a way to heal my sacrum, and I used it through bar. And that's and God works in very mysterious ways. And that's one thing. If you're struggling with an injury, a lot of people use injuries as a way to be special. And as they think it's a proper excuse not to do the works. Listen, if you got a body, you've had an injury. You're not special. We all have injuries, all of us. I've practiced with a broken wrist, a broken sacrum. I've struggled with arthritis. If you have a body, that's what's going to happen. That's just your karma. Now, with that being said, when you have an injury, we work with the injury, but if you're using that as an excuse to not work out, you have fallen for your ego. That's your ego. That's just your ego trying to get you away from the work. Anyway, but because whenever you have an injury, Cindy says it's best that your body's asking you to redirect. You need to redirect your energy. And so when I broke my sacrum, I had my free will choice. I could either just quit and not do it anymore, or I could use it as a chance to learn and grow and evolve and find a new path. And that's when I incorporated bar, which has opened up everything, which was in Tamara's chart. So you guys thought we were laughing at. When I did Tamara's chart, she was like, she basically predicted this platform. And I had no idea what she was talking about because I was doing bar by myself, but I wasn't teaching it.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. And we just finished, or we're still kind of finishing up, you guys. We're doing a 30-day beginner guide for beginners.
Yes, which is so awesome.
So every time you sign up for when you sign up for our platform, we can send you, which is a 30-day beginner guide to help you, because a lot of people don't know where to start. Paula, I realize that. And especially if you're doing this at home by yourself. Like I've been fortunate enough to have a Shala when I was first have a teacher right there that I could flesh and bones could talk to, not online, that I could actually, so I had structure set up for me because you need it in the beginning. You absolutely need structure set up. Discipline is the root word of disciple. So finding that discipline, but you don't know how to do it. So we've created a 30-day guide to help specifically for beginners, to help you learn how to use the platform. We've given you kind of a menu to help you build up. Yeah. So, and that'll be done soon. We were almost finished with it. And anything else you want to add, Paula?
No, I'm just really, really excited and just can't wait to, start connecting with people and, having chats. I'm really looking forward to when we're going to start doing the live chats. That'll be in the new year.
Yeah.
Because we'll be starting that as of February, I believe.
Yeah, we're just right now, you guys, we're in the soft launch because we're trying to make sure that there's so many unexpected things. Like we know what we're doing when it comes to teaching, but we're still making sure that we have all the wrinkles ironed out on the platform.
And I'm kind of the technical support of the platform. So anything's wrong, you got to message me.
Poor Paula, I don't know how to do anything when it comes. I just send her a bunch of videos. I'll send her a text and be like, "Sorry, I'm dumping a bunch of videos."
Here's 20 emails. Just deal with it.
I'm like, don't panic. I'm just sending them all to you now because I just finished editing them. You don't have to respond right away. I'm just getting them to you because I don't know how to do any of that. So, and I can't wait to start doing live classes, you guys. We're going to be doing, and that's really going to help me. So if you are part of our platform, I'm hoping what we're going to start doing is like a monthly newsletter that we're going to send out where we'll have the dates and times where you'll just have the Zoom link where you can just hop on. And that's going to help me because I can see you. Like if you send me an email with problems, I can kind of figure it out, but it's not going to really make sense to me until I actually see your body doing the movements. Because like I talked about the knee, it could be multiple things that are happening with something that's going wrong. And I'm not going to know until I can actually see you practice and see how you're stepping, where you're subconsciously avoiding. And so I'm really excited about that because that's going to give me tools to help you even more. And I will say too, I'm going to have to call out Jen Brown. She's one of our students on the platform. She's been, I love Jen. I've gotten to know Jen. She's done yoga courses with me, all sorts of stuff. Jen Brown, I will say you are part of the reason why I created a 90-minute video too, because I've been so focused on beginners. And then I saw you signed up and this girl's fit. She's done a lot of exercising in the past. So I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I see you, Jen. All right. Let me create a 90-minute video. Let me do some videos for people. And of course, the 60-minute fusion classes are good for people too. Most of these videos we're putting as all levels. Some are specifically beginner friendly, low impact, but every video I'm going to give you options. So even if you are a beginner, you can do some of the more, you're going to have options to take a lower impact if you want. And I always say, if it gets overwhelming, just walk in place, just keep your body moving and catch back up when you can. I encourage you to do these videos over and over and over again so you can chart your progress. And that's a cool feeling when you actually like finish it.
And when it just starts to flow, like me and my sister were doing your workout the other day, and we were just so unco. But some of the moves, I was like, yes, I can do this really easily now because it's familiar. My body has that muscle memory developing because I've done it a few times.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's great.
nerves, it's like osmosis. It's like an integral part. Like a lot of them, I have you lifting your hands up and down. And I do this for
Yes.
particular reasons. I'm having you spread your fingers apart. And I talk about that in a 90-minute one because the chakras in your hands, I'm trying to get you to really push so that you're opening up those values from the heart. And then I do a lot of this. Well, that is because, again, the heart chakra. The heart chakra isn't just in the front of your body, it's also in the back of your body behind your shoulder blades. And so when we push forward, we're opening. So we're working with that hatha, that in out, that push pull movement, which is also clearing the stuck energy through the heart chakra, right? Which is then going to open up values to the lower. I tell people if you struggle with self-esteem issues, sometimes you can talk yourself in circles. Why do I have low self-esteem? And talk is cheap, right? At some point, we got to stop talking and we got to actually do the work. If you're someone who struggles with low self-esteem and you've never been quite able to crack it, just try this. It's not going to hurt you. Just try. Just don't talk about it anymore and start strengthening your core. Don't even think about your self-esteem issues. Don't try to figure out why you have low self-esteem. Just put it to the side. You've thought yourself in circles. Crazy making, right? Just put it to the side for a moment. Why don't you focus on getting your core strong? You might be like, why? What does that have to do with it? Self-esteem issues come from your lower chakras. Where are your lower chakras located? Your lower body. So let's get
So you got to strengthen that.
Let's bring some fluidity, some vitality, some activation. So maybe we should start thinking about having a strong core. And listen, women are always going to have you're going to have a six-pack, but you're going to be softer, right? So, because you're a woman. But let's get it strong, not for you to look in a bathing suit, but for you to have confidence. So you feel
Absolutely.
your own beauty and your own purpose, because you do have a purpose of being here. But we got to activate those chakras. And that's what's exciting. We got to get that vitality into your life. And that excites me because I love to see people feeling good about themselves. And so anyway, we've been going on for a really long time. I love this stuff. This is my favorite episode. This and snooping on dead people and being petty about dead people are my favorite things to talk about. Is there anything else you want to say, Paula, before we sign off?
No. Thank you so much for sharing all your info today. It was just so fascinating and I just loved it. I just love learning about all of this. It's awesome. So thank you so much, Bryce. And
Absolutely.
thank you everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this information as well.
I'm gonna put Paula's channel links and all of our stuff for the Academy down in the description box below, guys. We're still doing the $25 a month for the soft launch. And if you sign up now, it'll always be at $25 a month. When the price goes up in the end of February, beginning of March to $40, you'll still be at $25. So please get in while the getting's good. And again, kind of circling back to fasting. If fasting is something you are super interested in doing for a spiritual practice, I would definitely, my suggestion to you would be find a teacher. Find somebody that can work with you and prep you so that you're doing it the right way. And kind of a hard, fast rule for me too is if you have seriously struggled with like disordered eating, if you have the propensity to try to starve yourself, as a professional, I would tell you that I don't think fasting is part of your karma in this life because you already, that's feeding it, that might turn into a tool to feed into something that you're already dealing with. So focus on that. I don't think it's safe. And we want to, and this shit's hard. Like spiritual word is hard, as hard as it is already hard. So we want,
personally for me, just hearing this information, it just felt like a huge relief because it's like, okay, awesome. I know that doing exercise and doing the meditations every day, then that's enough. And then that's just like, whew, one less thing to worry about.
And if you want to do a detox cleanse, you can cleanse whilst continuing to eat. I actually pulled this out. Like I do these because I struggle with my colon. It's a colon forte. It's all natural stuff. Also, intestinal movement formula from a Health Force is a great company. I would definitely use herbs, but I don't stop eating when I do. I continue to eat, and I just to help my colon. Now, for me,
this is that extra support. Yeah, and like what I mentioned, the diatomaceous surf and the clay that also helps get things moving through the bowels and cleaning everything up.
If you're curious about that, just email Paula or me privately. We can reach out and we can help you find a good. You don't have to stop eating if you want to do that cleanse. We can. If you feel like you're constipated and you can't, you need something stuck, and the exercise alone isn't doing it. I can help you with that. Paula can help you with that. There are other ways to go about setting you up and getting you unstuck versus like starving yourself. So, you know, so so we don't want you hurting yourself. So, all right,
Yes.
you guys. Well, I'm so excited. And
Awesome.
we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.
Yes. Bye.